Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Sorrow of Omega's Broken Heart. Episode 14. Chapter 179. 2 weeks passed. Logan did not wake up yet. It was now a habit for everyone to see Logan lying on the bed, motionless. Everything in the pack house had returned to its normal state. Beta Wade was taking care of all of Logan's responsibilities. Alpha Neil was providing assistance to him. Logan's other officials were also loyal. They did not give pack members any chance to complain. Nevertheless, the biggest problem was that the news about Logan's health was spreading in the air. The whole pack was now aware of his condition. They began to ask about Logan. Alpha Neil announced that Logan had gone outside for work. He did not want to leak it since the head alpha was sick. It would be a green flag for other pack's alphas. Lucas had not left the Moonlight Crown pack yet. As he said to his beta 2 weeks ago, he was really staying here for quite some time. No one knew why he was staying there, leaving his own pack. But his parents were happy about it. In fact, Ella started to spend time with her son. Though Lucas told her not to talk to him, she still tried hard to win her son's heart. In the meantime, Elisa was required to continue with her studies while simultaneously coming to the pack house. Due to the fact that the wedding had not been cancelled, she was doing Luna's duty. No one was asking about the wedding since the alpha was out of the pack. But Elisa had to face so many questions in school. Students always kept asking her when Logan would come back and how he could leave before the wedding. Some of them said he did not want to marry Elisa, and that was why he ran away. When the wedding date passed, he would return. Elisa ignored everyone. She knew soon they would get to know about the cancellation of the wedding. A few days ago, Alpha Neil called her to talk. When she went to him, he asked her about everything. She did not stop herself that day and told him everything. She told him how Logan rejected her. She even told him how Lucas proposed to her and promised her that he would become a better person. But Logan did not like it and warned her that she would have to be with him. She told him how her parents blackmailed her. Alpha Neil felt disappointed. He said to her that he was feeling shameful about what Logan had done to her. He told her that he would cancel the wedding soon. Even more so, he was furious with his best friend. He assured her that he would talk to him about it and asked him why he did that. Elisa was afraid that the friendship between the two friends would crack after it, but on the following day, everything appeared to have returned to normal between them. Alpha Neil did not even call off the wedding either. But since she had already divulged all of this information, she made it clear to Alpha Neil that she did not wish to be with Logan. So, for her, it was abundantly evident that she would not live like before after Logan woke up. She believed Neil would announce the cancellation of the wedding soon. There was no indication as to when Logan would regain consciousness, despite the fact that only 2 weeks had elapsed. In the last 2 weeks, Elisa had noticed Elora going to Logan's room a few times. Whenever she came out, her eyes were puffy. Elisa felt that Elora did not have consent for the rejection. She was forced to do that. In her opinion, Elora loved Logan. In fact, after the rejection, she still had feelings for him. Elisa, stay here for tonight. Tisa told Elisa. Tisa remained right here with Lucas and Max rather than going back to the pack. Elisa relied on her as a pillar of support. Elisa was pleased that Tisa was with her. No, I am leaving. I have to go back with Mom and Dad. I have to attend a few important classes tomorrow. Elisa replied. Oh, that's sad. I am coming tomorrow again. So there is nothing to be sad about. Elisa said and chuckled. Tisa pouted and said, "It's fun to stay in the same house together. I really wish that we could." When she realized what she was going to say, she took a moment to stop and then bit her tongue. She turned her head to inspect the faces of the other people who were staring at them. Everyone was sitting on the couch together while talking about Logan's health and pack-related issues. However, Lucas was not in them. During those days, Elisa had been making observations. She was shocked that he usually did not step out of his room much. Whenever the maids went to his room to serve him meals, they talked about how busy he was working on his papers or on his laptop. She learned that he was an alcoholic as well as a chain smoker throughout their conversation. He enjoyed working while smoking cigarettes and consuming alcohol at the same time. At other times, Elisa felt the urge to go confront him and tell him to quit since she knew it was bad for his health. But whenever she considered doing so, her internal conflict kept her from doing so. She had the impression that he was a very dangerous man. With each passing day, she was only praying that Lucas would not hurt her father. No matter what, he was her father. How could she stand by and let him suffer or die right in front of her? "Then we are leaving today. See you tomorrow, Alpha," Glenn remarked to Neil before getting to his feet. Joey and Elisa followed him and stood up to leave. Alpha Neil acknowledged him with a nod. Ella gave Joey and Elisa a warm grin. "Let me see you off." Wade stood up and said to Glenn. Logan always did that, so Wade just wanted to fulfill the responsibility that his Alpha used to do. "No way, it's okay. Wade, you are a really hard-working guy," Glenn told him. Wade smiled at him. "I am just doing my duty as a sensible guy. I don't want Logan to feel disappointed when he wakes up." Indeed. A Beta should do that. Because of this, they are their Alpha's closest and most trusted allies. Beta Max commented on the situation as he was also seated with them. Wade liked that Beta Max appreciated it instead of mocking him. Wade was just about to thank him but paused. Everyone looked at him with confusion. He furrowed his brows as if he were stunned by something. Almost immediately, he switched his attention to Alpha Neil. "Alpha," his desperate voice came out but was interrupted by a few pack fighters who rushed inside the pack house. They looked at Alpha Neil and informed him, "Alpha Easton has attacked our pack from every territory." The door of the room opened. Beta Max entered the room and looked at the man working on the laptop. His hand was grabbing a glass of wine while his fingers were holding a cigarette between them. "Lucas, this pack is under attack." Lucas closed the laptop and looked at him. "Who?" "Alpha Easton." Beta Max responded once he realized what the question was about and what he was being asked. Lucas placed the glass on the coffee table in front of him and nodded his head. He brought his hand up to his mouth and inhaled deeply of the cigarette smoke. His eyes were cloudy. "Will we know?" he interrupted Beta Max. "But it is a one-way battle, Lucas. This pack's Alpha is in bed. If they come to this place with the intention of killing him, the pack will be swallowed up by the East Flow pack. So." Beta Max took a deep breath and then nodded his head. "As you wish. It's not our battle to fight. It is not appropriate for us to intervene in the war between the other two parties. If the Moonlight Crown pack has the guts to win over the East Flow pack, let them fight. We should not care." Beta Max did not convince him. It was his choice. He was sure that he had his own reasons. He went downstairs to see others, especially his mate, Tisa. The downstairs was messed up as all the maids hid in their staff quarters. The whole family was in a disaster. Alpha Neil had left the pack house with Logan's officials. Glenn also followed them behind. They were arranging the pack fighters to stop their enemies from coming to the pack house's way. Elisa's level of anxiety was so high that she felt like crying. She had never faced a war before. She did not like wars. She was sure that so many people would die tonight trying to save the pack. Fear rushed through her mind when she thought about her father. Joey and Ella were crying together as they were concerned about their husbands' lives and the future of their pack. "Don't cry. Everything will be okay." Georgiana came down and told Ella and Joey. "Georgiana, is there any way to save everyone? I don't want anyone to get hurt." Ella asked. "Anyone, or you don't want your family to get hurt? Because you know that a war meant killing hundreds of wolves." "No, I want everyone to be saved from this battle. Do something, Georgiana." "I can't do anything about this situation, Ella. It is not something in my hand." Elora was standing next to her mother. She was watching the two women crying on the couch. Georgiana got a call on her phone. She said to others, "We have to go to war. Someone is injured. A pack fighter had just informed me." Everyone was shocked. "Who?" Ella asked. "Don't know. Let's go there first." Both Ella and Joey got to their feet. They all glanced at Elisa as she sobbed. "Are you coming with us?" Joey asked because she knew this place was more dangerous. Elisa shook her head. "No, I will stay here with Logan." "No, Elisa. Come with us. I will send you somewhere safe." Ella told her. "Please, let me stay." They nodded and left for the forest. Georgiana looked at Elisa and asked, "Why didn't you go with them? I don't think you really like Logan so much that you decided to take care of him in the time of war. He is my good friend. I can't go away, leaving him alone." Elora stared at them without responding to anything. Elisa hurried to the room where Logan was. She moved over to the stool that was located next to the bed. Tisa followed her behind. "Logan, wake up. Please, wake up. Your parents need you tonight. They will destroy everything. Wake up and save them," she said and patted his chest. However, the man was unmoved. Elisa had no idea what she would do. She didn't even know what was happening in the war. She stayed there for some time. Suddenly, she started to feel fear for her parents' lives. Especially her father, who went to fight. She realized that her decision was wrong. She should have gone with her mother and Ella. She spoke out, "I will go to the battleground." "Stop talking nonsense, Elisa," Tisa said to her. "No, I have to reach where everything is getting destroyed. I want to go to my parents. I don't want them to get hurt." She got on her feet and left the room. On her way, Elisa met Elora, who was heading to Logan's room. "Elisa, don't go out," Tisa told her. But Elisa ignored her caution and rushed outside. She could see fire in the sky. "Did they throw fireballs to destroy our pack?" she thought and headed to the forest. Nevertheless, she observed several pack fighters making their way back to the pack house. She intervened and questioned them, "What happened?" "Beta Wade gave us the command to stand outside and watch over the pack house. The situation is currently quite difficult to understand. Alpha Easton came here in full force. It's a win or die war. If we win, we will take over the East Flow pack, but if we lose, Alpha Easton will take over our pack." Elisa bit her bottom lip in fear. She could not help but inquire about her father's health. "How is my dad? Is he okay?" "You are asking about the former Beta Glenn?" Elisa nodded her head and prayed in her heart. He sustained wounds to his arm, but he is continuing to fight. We do not know whether or not he was injured by a weapon mixed with poison. It is possible for it to cause severe harm. As soon as she heard that, she could feel her entire body beginning to shake from the inside out. Her eyes welled up with tears. She saw blurry in front of her. Who could save them right now? Only one name came to her mind. She closed her eyes and turned around to the pack house. She threw away all of her self-respect and ran inside the pack house. Her legs froze when she had just entered. Lucas was sitting on the couch while smoking. He was sitting like a king, with one leg crossed over the other. He had one hand resting comfortably on the headrest of the couch, and the other hand was on his lap since he smoked with it. In the past 2 weeks, she had tried her best to stay away from him. He did not even come out much as well. She began to step forward. The movement of her legs came to a halt in front of him. He did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on the entrance. The demise of you all has finally come. There is no hope for any of you anymore. He let out a lower tone and smirked. Elisa sobbed as she heard him. When he shifted his eyes to her face, she felt her knees tremble. What? What do you want? He asked without breaking eye contact. She fell on her knees and looked at the floor. Tears streamed out of her eyes as she continued to cry. Please, save our pack. Elisa. When Tisa saw her best friend crying on the ground while kneeling, she was unable to hold back her need to rush up to her and comfort her. On the other hand, Max took her by the hand and pulled her along with him. Max, let me go, she said. Max did not listen to her and began to drag her up the stairs. Meanwhile, Georgiana and Elora were looking at Elisa. They were standing a little far from the couch Lucas was sitting on. Lucas's eyes were fixed on Elisa the entire time. When Elisa did not hear him, she raised her head and looked at him. Please. Lucas raised an eyebrow and asked, why would I? Lucas, that's your family. Your father is in the war, fighting for this pack. My father is already injured. Who knows what will happen to him? So you are worried for your dad? No. Not only for my dad but also for everyone. This is my pack. I want my pack to be saved. But this is not my pack. Why would I help you all? He asked and inhaled smoke, then exhaled it the next moment. She frowned at him. She was getting angry at his remarks. How can you say that? This is also your pack. Your brother is lying in bed. If he had been awake, he would have never let his father go to war alone. He was always concerned about his parents' lives. That's why he tried to avoid wars. He scoffed when he heard her. Then your head alpha is a cowardly man. Let me tell you the truth. He is not a leader but a follower who only works under the former alpha. The alpha, who avoids wars in fear of losing lives, can't be a leader but a mere pack member, who hides in his house in fear of danger. Elisa closed her eyes as she realized that she could not make this man understand anything. So you won't help? There's no reason for me to. Is there some kind of alliance that exists between the Black Moon Pack and the Moonlight Crown Pack? I can't remember it. He mocked her with his words. She rose up slowly and looked directly into his eyes as she did so. She gave him a small nod and then continued, don't help then. Let your parents die in front of you, then regret this night for the rest of your life. You will mourn that you had a chance, but you could not save the people who gave you a chance to come to this world. Stop lecturing me. I am not in the mood, woman. His cold voice made her flinch. She took a few steps back before turning around to face the entrance. I am an Omega, but I will also fight for my pack until I die." Saying that, she left the pack house. She dashed to the woodland that was close to the pack house, where she entered the forest and continued running. In the meantime, Elora held Georgiana's hand and took her to a corner. "Mom, you will help them. Are you mad? Do you think witches can help in a werewolf war? We don't have any work there." "Then why did you tell Aunt Ella about going to the war?" "I was thinking about something at the time," she responded while casting a glance toward the door of Logan's room. Elora was not a fool. After following her gaze, she became enraged at her mother. "Mom, I can't believe this. After saving him, how can you think like this?" "What did I think?" Georgiana asked her daughter. "You want to hurt him, don't you?" "Elora, my child. Don't be so silly." "Why would I?" she said and held Elora's hand with a smile. Elora stepped backward and warned her, "Mom, if you do anything bad to him, I will see you." Georgiana grabbed her arm tightly and asked, "What will you do to me? I am your mother, but look how you are talking to me so disrespectfully. It seemed like I spoiled you too much." Elora snatched her arm away from her mother's hold and replied, "I can do many things, Mom. This time, I will tell Lucas everything truly. I will tell him that you are the one who cut my wrist and let me die in pain so that he would come and save me." Georgiana's eyes widened. She pressed her palm over her daughter's mouth and scolded her. "You have gone completely insane due to your love for that Logan. Now, will you start to blackmail your own mother?" Elora rolled her eyes and remained silent. She could not expect anything more from her mother than to emotionally blackmail her. On the other side, Elisa was frantically sprinting in the direction toward the border where the war was taking place. She had to run long. She reached a point where she could see Ella and her mother, Joey, standing and crying. They were surrounded by a large number of guards who prevented them from proceeding to the next region. "Mom, Aunt." She went to them. "Elisa." They were surprised that she had come there. "Go away. They will see you. You are an unmarked Omega. It's not good for you to be here." Ella told her and wiped her eyes. Elisa shook her head and told them that she would not go back. In fact, she wanted to go to the war. She could not stand there while looking at the war. She had learned to fight. It was time to apply them to the enemies. How could she stand there looking at everything without doing anything? She made a move behind the barrier and shoved a guard out of the blue. The guard moved aside, as he had no idea that she would do that. She quickly entered the area, leaving them behind. One of the guards yelled and tried to follow her to bring her back. "Catch her!" Elisa evaded capture by the guards. She had a speed that allowed her to run. When she looked up and saw the view in front of her, she could not help but stop. A small number of trees were consumed by the flames. If they were to spread, the blaze could consume the entire forest. She witnessed the fighters from her pack engaged in war, but it was clear that they were outmatched by their rival wolves. She wanted to shift, but she thought it would only grab the attention of others since her wolf was white. She was able to observe that not everyone had shifted. Half of the people shifted, and others remained in their human form. A man brandished a wooden stake in an attempt to attack her. She instantly kicked on his lower half and used the opportunity to steal the stake out of his hand. She did not know what gave her the bravery, but she pierced the man in the heart with the stake, and then she ran ahead to kill others. She had never killed anyone before, so it was really unfamiliar and mournful for her. However, she would need to fight if she wanted to save herself and her pack. They were not innocent people either. She was taken aback by how well she could defend herself. She was unaware of her true fighting potential at the time. She was able to evade and kill a great number of attackers. It was not a movie where she would not get a single scratch in any fight. In reality, she was injured in a few different places. But despite this, she continued to fight. At one point, she noticed Beta Wade. She followed his direction, and found her father and Alpha Neil. All of them were in their wolf form. Everyone was in their wolf form at that point. Because she was so preoccupied with finding them, she failed to remember that she needed to protect herself. She felt a scratch on her right arm. Blood rushed out of her hand. At that time, she saw all the pack fighters of the East Flow pack getting heavy over her pack fighters. Alpha Easton was going to win the war. Only a few people of the Moonlight Crown pack were alive, which did not give them winning because their head Alpha was already missing in the war. It would be declared that the head Alpha fled away out of the dread of the impending war. Elisa cried when she spotted a few wolves circling over her father. She made an effort to approach him, but another wolf blocked her path and began to claw her body. She hissed in pain while trying to kill the wolf. The wolf was going to bite her leg in an attempt to separate it from the rest of her body. However, at that precise time, a loud growl could be heard coming from the depths of the dark forest, which was now illuminated by an orange blaze. The growl left everyone in complete shock. They halted and searched around for the person who had made the growling sound. Everyone could make out a large number of silhouettes approaching from the opposite side. "Who are they?" one of the pack fighters of the East Flow pack asked. After a while, after they had begun to slaughter the wolves belonging to the Easy Flow pack, they yelled very loudly. "The Black Moon pack has also attacked the pack." Elisa was shocked to hear that. Did he come to kill them? Because he clearly refused to help them when she asked for his help. The situation turned wild. The war became increasingly chaotic as each pack warrior belonging to the East Flow pack was killed one by one. Elisa stopped the flow of blood from her arm wound by pressing on it as she stood in the shade of a tree. She was already feeling hazy. When she entered the war, she did not experience any dread for herself. But now that she was thinking about Lucas, she noted that her heart rate was slowing down. "He has attacked our pack. How can they survive now? Will he kill us?" she thought. It was well known throughout history just how mysterious Alpha he was. He had never been defeated in any battle. That meant he would kill everyone tonight. "Please, Lucas, just please. Don't do anything that will make you regret forever," she said and cried. She did not want to hide, but her hand was hurting. Due to the severe pain, she was unable to move. She tried to convince herself to get out and jump into the fight once again. She could make out the scratches and cuts made by the claws of other wolves on her body. They were oozing blood all over the place. Instantaneously, she had a thought pop into her head. Didn't Georgiana mention to the other people that she would be coming as well? Where exactly did she go? Was she holding her breath, expecting Lucas to attack? Is she going to help him kill all of us? She thought. What about Elora? Does she also want that? She tried to find the answers as she looked at her arm. No, I cannot allow myself to be terrified of this wound. I have to fight back, she told herself, and then she emerged from the cover of the tree's shadow. She started running while holding the wooden stake in an effort to protect herself, despite the fact that her right arm was injured and she was able to strike. She dodged a few but could not avoid a man's attack. He was about to pierce a stake in her stomach when a hand stopped him. She cautiously moved her head to look for the person who had saved her. When she realized who it was, she was completely taken aback. She gasped and let out, "Logan." She had a hard time believing the fact that Logan was awake and standing next to her. Was he really Logan? Or was she merely having a dream? Did she have hallucinations at that moment? Logan killed the man and turned to her with a warm smile. "Are you okay?" But he made a frowning face when his gaze landed on her arm. When he woke up in the pack house and found himself there, everything was a jumble. He left for the war and came here. He realized that he could not shift, which really broke his heart. But he was an alpha. How could he not fight back and run away? He jumped into the war without his wolf and started to fight like an alpha. "When did you wake up?" she inquired while maintaining her focus on him. "Before a while." After responding, he turned his attention to the pack of wolves that was closing in on them. He was successful in throwing them both to the ground and then snatching the stake out of Elisa's hand. He drove the spike deeper into the chest of the wolf. Elisa's eyes widened as she watched a wolf race for Logan. However, a wolf with black and brown fur pounced on the other wolf and killed him. Logan turned to stare at the wolf that had rescued him. After a moment of silence, he spoke softly. "Thanks, Ella." That time, Elisa got to know that it was Ella. The hue of her wolf surprised her quite a bit. The hybrid did not possess the one-of-a-kind color. Ella veered off in a different direction and rushed ahead. Logan was unable to prevent himself and gaze at her as she confidently took down a large number of wolves all by herself. Both Logan and Elisa headed in the direction of their fathers. They stopped when they saw Alpha Easton. He had not shifted yet. "Alpha Neil, I was told that your son has been ill. See? I decided to seize the opportunity and attack your pack. But I was unaware that your other son was still in this pack. But sadly, he can't save his father now. Because you are under my control." Alpha Neil was about to go to him, but a few wolves captured him. "Dad!" When Logan realized that his father was in danger, he let out a scream of rage. The Moonlight Crown pack immediately stopped fighting and turned around with surprised expressions on their faces. When they looked up and saw their alpha standing in front of them, they could not believe what they were seeing. The adversarial warriors saw an opportunity to attack them and took advantage of it. "Logan! You have woken up. Son, why are you here? Go back!" Alpha Neil said in the mind link. "Logan!" Beta Wade was in the same state of shock. "Get away from my dad!" Logan yelled in Alpha Easton's direction. Alpha Easton laughed at him. "What brazen behavior you have! I've heard that you have a lot of fighting skills. Where exactly is your field of expertise? Why didn't you just shift? Or have you perhaps lost it? Leave my dad!" Logan repeated it again. "A few years ago, I made an attempt to take your life, but at that point, your brother was able to protect you from me. But tonight, he himself has sent his troops to slay each and every one of you. How do you feel about it? Who will save you now? He just made my victory that much easier." The entire war started over again, except this time, every official, Alpha Neil and Glenn were captured by the wolves of the rival pack. From both sides, a few men seized Logan and Elisa. Logan glared at them and tried to move because his wolf was not reacting to him. Alpha Easton was unable to contain his amusement as he watched them struggle. However, his laughter could not last for very long. His smile froze when he heard a growl. When he noticed a man coming toward them, all of the color in his face immediately faded away. Nobody tried to harm him because they were aware that doing so would only result in their own deaths. "Lucas!" Elisa whispered to herself as she stared at him. She tried to break free herself when a few men grabbed his arms. "What are you doing here?" Alpha Easton asked while furrowing his brow. "Come on, East. Is this a place to have chit-chat? I was wondering if this is how you win other packs." Lucas asked while sweeping his gaze over everyone with his sharp eyes. There were 4 formidable wolves standing behind him, indicating that they were his officials. Elisa observed that there was an immense amount of blood covering Lucas's body. But it was not his blood, it was the blood of the other wolves who were trying to get close to him. "All right, Lucas, how about we make a deal?" "Deal? Interesting." When he lifted his hand, his wolves immediately stopped fighting with one another. Iston's sides were also doing the same. But the Moonlight Crown pack did not have many pack fighters in the war at this time. "Let me kill this father and son, and then we will divide the pack amongst ourselves. What's to say?" Lucas raised a brow and nodded his head. "Not a bad idea." Elisa's eyes widened. "Lucas, how can you say that? It's your own blood and bones. Your father and brother. Will you let him kill them?" She yelled even though she was crying. Lucas gave her a stern look, signaling for her to shut her mouth. Logan appeared unruffled and as though he had nothing else to say. In the meantime, Alpha Neil had a disappointed look on his face as he stared at his son, Lucas. At that time, Ella's voice could be heard reverberating across the forest as she reached there. "Don't kill them." "Mom, why are you here?" Logan questioned his mother as she was being held captive by a group of wolves. Joey was also present, but she quickly shifted and rushed to Glenn. Elisa was unable to cry any longer. She had the impression that everything was beyond fixing. Everything was beginning to slip through her fingers, as well as her mind. "Don't touch my mom!" Logan yelled at the wolves in an angry manner. "Calm yourself down, Alpha Boy. We hold no ill will or resentment toward noble ladies. We are simply interested in taking your head, and more specifically, that of your father." Alpha Easton remarked to Neil while maintaining her sneer. "You killed my father in a war. I didn't forget that. You gained the support of our pack members in order to oppose him simply due to the fact that you were not a fan of the way in which he was leading the pack. After that, when you attacked the pack, everyone joined in to assist you in killing him. You can never earn my forgiveness. Your beloved son will be killed right in front of your very eyes. Simply sit tight and keep an eye out till it's your number." Alpha Easton was about to approach Logan when he felt a hand grip his shoulder from behind. This prevented him from going to Logan. "Why are you in such a hurry, my old buddy?" Lucas's dark voice came to everyone's ears. Alpha Easton slowly turned to him and asked, "Didn't we make a deal? Did I just say that I agree?" Lucas Alpha Easton got interrupted by a punch and fell to the ground. Everyone shifted their attention to him. They realized that his face had been pierced. When they switched their attention to Lucas's hand, they noticed that he was holding something in his fingers. It was the same as if 4 razor-sharp knives were brought together. 4 silver knives! Easton exclaimed. When Easton saw what Lucas was holding in his palm, he was taken aback and astonished. He realized that his face was beginning to go numb. The moment the East Flow packs noticed that their alpha was being attacked, they resumed the battle. One of the wolves rushed to Lucas. "Oh, Beta Ramon! Instead of sending you a warning, I should have killed you that night," Lucas muttered. A few wolves joined Beta Ramon as well, and all of them were officials working for Alpha Easton. The pack warriors of the East Flow pack were the current target of Lucas's officials. They were busy killing the pack fighters of the East Flow pack. Lucas shoved away all of the wolves that were approaching him and rushed to the direction of Ramon. When Ramon jumped on Lucas, both of them fell to the ground. A painful growl came out from their direction. Lucas! Elisa let out a piercing scream. She cried out loudly. Fear began to quicken the pace of her heartbeat, and she felt her stomach turn. She was able to make out Lucas's body underneath Ramon. During her grief, she had the sensation that she was going to die. She thought that Beta Ramon had killed him. Every one of the Moonlight Crown pack was shocked. Because Beta Ramon was in his wolf form at the time, his body hovered above Lucas. Everyone thought the growl came from Lucas. But their mouths dropped open in surprise when they watched Lucas push Beta Ramon's body away from him. What shocked them was the heart in Lucas's hand. He ripped Beta Ramon's heart out of his chest with his bare hands. I knew you would attack one day. Because of you, I had to spend quite some time in this pack. But you took a long time. As you can see, the person you are hunting has even recovered from death. You should have come before he woke up. Lucas said and turned to Easton, who was now a little far from him. Easton was unmoved. The cuts on his face had a burned appearance to them. Lucas twisted his head to the right and then to the left. The sounds of bones cracking reached ears around him. Lucas, you have always protected your family without letting them know. Because of you, no one has ever had the courage to attack this pack. But not any longer. Saying that, Alpha Easton shifted and rushed to Alpha Neil to kill him. Dad! Neil! There was an echo of Logan and Ella's screams. Alpha Neil prepared to draw his final breath and closed his eyes when he realized that there was no way for him to survive. But the attack never came to him. With a ground-shaking growl, a black giant wolf shifted and stopped Alpha Easton before he could reach Neil. Alpha Easton's eyes widened as he saw the giant wolf. It was impossible for him to accept that it was Lucas. The pair of orange eyes came dangerously close to taking his life. He forgot everything and wanted to ask forgiveness as he recognized Lucas's real identity. But Lucas did not give him any chance to apologize because, before that, he detached his head from his body, which caused it to roll down to Alpha Neil's legs. Everyone was frightened, but at the same time, they were compelled to feel numb as they looked at what had just happened. Lucas looked at everyone and raised his head to look at the moon, which came out of the cloud just to give shine to its favorite creature. He howled loudly. Each and everyone's knees were shaken by it. His scent made them feel inferior and forced them to submit. They fell on their knees, whether they were in human form or their wolf form. Elisa was shocked from the moment Lucas shifted. Her eyes never left him when she saw him killing the enemy with just a single move. His scent also made her fall on her knees, but all of those were not the reason for her shock. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she mumbled, "Mate." Everyone was gazing at Lucas with shocked eyes. One of them spoke out, "A true blood." Logan was staring at Lucas. His eyes were focused on him. He was also feeling submissive toward him. While sitting on his knees, he remembered the night of Lucas's birthday. He had told him about it that night. "Don't be so arrogant about your wolf, Alpha Logan." He leaned close to him and whispered, "Because if I shift, no one here can stay on their feet. You will have to bow to me, and I will destroy everything in front of your eyes." Logan shifted his eyes to everyone around them. Indeed, there was not a single person who stayed on their feet. Everyone had to bow to Lucas when he shifted. He turned his attention to Lucas once again. His eyes met his. There was a slight smile scrambled on Logan's lips as he spoke out loudly. "All hail to the new Alpha of the Moonlight Crown Pack, Alpha Lucas." Everyone around them started to howl and cheers. Since he attacked the pack and killed the enemy, and the Moonlight Crown Pack's Alpha was kneeling before him and surrendering himself, the war was won by the Black Moon Pack. Lucas's family was already surprised, including Glenn and Joey. But no one noticed or heard Elisa. She was still in perplexity. She could not believe that Lucas was her mate. However, Lucas did not give a glance at her for once. Could he not feel the mate bond? Elisa felt that life played a very dirty game with her. If she knew that Lucas was her mate, everything would not have turned out like this between them. She was stunned that he was a true-blood alpha. She recalled the painting she had seen in the art gallery. She remembered what the elder witch had told her. He was the almighty alpha, to whom everyone bowed to show respect and felt submissive before him. He gave shadows to the witches. Now, Elisa could understand why Georgiana or that older witch woman always bowed to him. It was not because he was a giant Pax Alpha but because of his rank. He was true blood. Beta Max rushed to Lucas and said something in their mind link. Lucas growled and linked with every wolf around him. It was the first time his pack members would hear him through a mind link. Everyone go back. His voice came out as an order. Everyone stood up and bowed to him, then left for their houses. All the Black Moon Pack's warriors left for their own pack. Lucas did not shift back. He was about to pass his father, but he stopped when he saw his father bow his head on the floor before him. It really startled others. It was a respectful act toward a head alpha, but at the same time, doing that was like losing self-respect for the person if he was a head alpha once. Lucas's brows shot up when he saw his father bowing in front of him. He gazed at him and said in his mind link, "Raise." But his father did not stand up, as if he did not want to. "Neil, why are you doing this? No matter what rank he is still your son." Ella said to Neil and hurried to him. Lucas looked away from them and left the forest without glancing at anyone. The war had finally ended. After a while, the fire department arrived to put out the blaze that was consuming the trees in the forest. One by one, everyone left for the pack house. When it was only Elisa and Logan left, she turned her head to Logan and noticed him. He was still kneeling, just like her. He was looking somewhere, as if he were lost in thought. Elisa had no energy to ask him anything. She was already drained with thoughts. She stood up slowly and said, "Let's go, Logan." Logan nodded his head and shot on his feet. He turned to her and smiled. "Are you happy? Hey." She thought Logan was taunting her because Lucas had become the head alpha. You should be. He deserves it." Logan let it out in a low tone and headed on the way back to the pack house. Elisa stared at his back. She frowned when she thought about him. Why did he not shift tonight? Why did he announce the win for Lucas without trying to fight against him? However, it was obvious. Lucas's winning was clear. No one could win against him. When Elisa reached the pack house, she saw no one in the living room. She understood that everyone had left for their own rooms. The whole pack house was turned into a mess because of the fear of war. She went to the guest room and took a shower. Her wounds were hurting, and her heart froze to feel that. When she came out of the bathroom after taking a shower, she heard noises coming from outside. She left the room and went to the living room. She stopped her steps when she noticed Alpha Neil was kneeling in front of Lucas. Everyone was shifted back, and no one was in their wolf form. "Why are you doing this? Do you want to get back my new pack?" Lucas asked him with a frown. Alpha Neil shook his head. He joined his hands in front of him and started to speak. "I have always ignored you and your abilities. Never did I want to learn what was on your mind. You have always protected my pack behind my back, but here I was, always taunting you for behaving rudely with me. From childhood, you wanted the parents who would be with you always, but we failed to divide our love between our sons equally. We should have thought about you. But we could not be the perfect parents for you. I am kneeling before you, not because you won my pack or saved my life. I am groveling before you in order to seek your pardon. We know we can't give you back your childhood, but don't break your relationship with your parents. We are getting old. Don't punish us like this. Forgive us, my son. Everyone got emotional because of Alpha Neil's actions. No one had ever seen him broken like this. Elisa wiped her tears when she saw how a father was apologizing to his son. It was true that even if he wanted, he could not give Lucas back his childhood, but at least he could be good to him in the future. They still had life to live in. Your father is right. Forgive us, my son. Ella said and kneeled next to her husband. Logan did not come between the parents and son. He stood there in a corner, looking at them. Lucas stared at his parents kneeling in front of him. Though he did not like to express anything, his heart hurt. He was a cold-blooded man. Behind his every anger, it was always his parents who had pushed him to the limit. How could they forget how they behaved with him and how they ignored him his whole life? But today, when Easton was going to kill his father, he really got mad at him. He cursed himself for not being cruel and watched his father die. In reality, he had never had a single intention to hurt his family. Though they failed to take his responsibility, he never forgot his duty. He sighed as his heart wanted to let it go. His heart was tired of grabbing hatred for his family. It was fun when no one knew who he was. But now, it felt like a burden when they learned about him. He turned his head to Beta Max. Beta Max nodded at him and glanced at the others. Owen and Vernon went to Neil and Ella. They helped them to stand up. You don't have to kneel in front of me, Lucas muttered without looking at them. Ella and Neil looked at him with a small smile. Can we think that you forgave us? Neil asked with a pair of glistening eyes. I can forgive anyone, but not them whom I chose not to, Lucas replied to Neil. His eyes then shifted to Glenn. His head was low. He did not let out a single word all these times. Lucas chuckled and stepped toward him. What did you say? I don't deserve your daughter. I am a reckless man. I don't have any fighting skills. I have never seen any war. All of these were your words. Am I right, former Gamma Glenn? Glenn gulped and looked into his eyes. He felt fear inside when he realized a flame of fire could be seen in his eyes. Forgive me, Alpha. I couldn't recognize you. But I still can't let my daughter marry anyone else except Logan. Everyone's eyes widened when they heard Glenn. They could not believe that Glenn turned out to be a stubborn man. Dad! What are you saying? Elisa spoke out and walked to him. No, Elisa. Only Logan can mark you. He was your mate, and no one else can mark you except him. Glenn said nonchalantly. Dad, what are you saying? He rejected me. We don't have any mate bond now. Have you forgotten that? There is nothing that can bind us together. She tried to make Glenn understand. Lucas gazed at Glenn. Interesting. Very interesting. Isn't it Colin? He said and chuckled. Gamma Colin nodded his head and replied, This man lost his sanity, Alpha. Permit me to kill him. He was almost ready to move forward. No, don't. Don't kill my dad. Elisa let out a scream. Joey started to cry. She sobbed and looked at Lucas. Please, my dear. Please don't hurt my husband. He is not a bad person. He doesn't dislike you either. He is just trying to save our daughter's life." Lucas glanced at Colin, and he stepped back. "He did not come to do anything. I had always liked you, Aunt Joey. But in return, you also betrayed me like my own mother. Well, that's the past. Let's forget it. What is there to save your daughter? Do you think I will kill her? Because, of course, if I want, I will. No one will stop me at that time." His tone and words came out as a warning. Elisa quietly listened to him. She frowned while thinking about why her mother said that her father was saving her life. "Let me tell you the truth." Logan spoke out. Everyone turned to him. He walked to Lucas and said, "It's because Elisa is a pure-blood Omega." Elisa's eyes widened. "Pure blood? What is it?" Logan looked at her and replied, "Pure-blood Omegas are rare. They had the purest white wolf and eyes the color of the ocean. They are known as the Omegas, and the moon goddess bestows her blessings upon them. In spite of the fact that they are Omegas, they possess the power of an alpha female. Their hearts are spotless, identical to the purity of their blood. But the blessings come with conditions. They can only mate with their fated mates, if not, they would lose their lives." Elisa was stunned upon hearing the details. Logan did not stop and continued. "That was why your dad never allowed you to shift in front of anyone or get training in your wolf form. He was afraid that other alphas would hunt to mark you since your scent was something alluring to them." Elisa turned to his father and asked, "Dad, why did you keep this secret from me? Why do you still want me to be with Logan after everything that has happened? Why? Why can't you allow me to be with someone else?" While listening to them, Lucas was standing there with an indifferent look, implying that he knew about all those things. He was a true-blood alpha, and his rank was not a joke. But his facial expression changed to grim when he heard Glenn. "Only your mate can mark you. And it's always Logan. Georgiana has never failed to forewarn us about you and your impending demise. When we asked her about it, she said that only Logan could be your mate and save your life. That was 6 years ago. Then, we have witnessed that several times he has saved you from dying. We were aware that the two of you were mates. We had no idea that Logan had rejected you. Your mom and I even went to talk with Georgiana about you and Lucas before I talked to you about marriage. She declared again that only Logan could be your lifesaver. Your wolf needs him to stay alive. No other alpha can mark you. She claimed that the blood of Lucas could not be transferred to you through marking. It will only kill you because he is not your mate. She really said that?" Lucas muttered while looking at Glenn. Glenn nodded at him. Neil strolled to him and asked, "Glenn, why didn't you inform me about it?" "Alpha, I always thought Logan liked Elisa, that was why I never put up the matter in front of you. But Georgiana never said anything like that to me. However, she said something similar to it. She said Logan's prosperity would depend on Elisa. If she stays closer to him, he will become a powerful alpha." Lucas frowned at the two fathers who were discussing their children's lives. He could not help but scoff. "And you all believe in her?" Glenn turned to him and said, "I know you have feelings for my daughter, but my hands are locked, my son. I can't push her to death. She is not an ordinary Omega. I have been hiding her wolf since her childhood." Alpha Neil looked at Lucas and said, "Lucas, how can we not trust Georgiana? She has the vision to see the future. No prophecy of hers has even gone wrong. She is the greatest of all the powers. A lunar witch, the highest rank in the most powerful coven." Lucas gazed at his father and nodded his head. That was why she took advantage of her abilities and used the opportunity to fool you all. Fool? What are you talking about, Lucas? Neil asked. But instead of Lucas, Elisa replied the answer, he is my mate. Everyone turned to Elisa. Glenn's voice shook as he asked, who? Lucas is my mate, Dad. She mumbled and lowered her head. Both of their parents' eyes widened. Glenn pressed his hand over his chest and stepped back. Dad! Elisa screamed and grabbed him, along with her mother. Glenn, are you okay? Joey asked. She was also shocked to hear her daughter. It was unbelievable to them. This can't be possible. Glenn said and tried to take deep breaths. Linus, help him. Logan told Linus since he was the pack doctor and he was also there to look for everyone's wounds after the war. Linus went to Glenn and put out an air pump from his pockets. After using it, Glenn was able to return to his normal self. At that moment, nobody spoke to one another. Lucas was maintaining his composure as he observed everything. But his official was the only one who could comprehend the wrath that was roaring out of his body. He refocused his attention on his officials and turned to face them. Did you all hear what they say? He asked them. Then his eyes shifted to Elora. She was present there, standing in a corner. Come here. He ordered with a deep voice. Lucas, she is not. Logan was about to take a stand for Elora, but he was paused by Lucas's glare. Elora walked to Lucas while lowering her head. Everyone could notice that she was crying. Her cheeks and eyelashes were full of tears. Did you know about all of these? He asked her with a deep voice. She sobbed and shook her head. Words, Elora? No, Alpha. I didn't know that she was planning all of these. He nodded his head. He lifted his hand, and she flinched in fear. But he rested his head on her head and said, I didn't make you a hybrid to feel fear like this. Right after this moment, it will be a tough time for you. I hope you will not lose your loyalty and disobey your alpha in any situation. Everyone was shocked when they heard Lucas. Logan parted his lips and asked, You made her hybrid? Lucas glanced at him and replied, Didn't she say before rejecting you that she is a true hybrid? I made her hybrid to save her life. I didn't know that my son was that powerful. Neil spoke out. You know nothing about your son. Lucas replied without looking at him. Neil felt bad that he was right, he did not know much about him. But he was happy that Lucas at least acknowledged that he was his son. Where is she? Find her and bring her in front of my eyes. Lucas ordered his officials. They were about to leave the pack house when Wade entered with a few guards. But with them was a woman. They were grabbing her arms while dragging her inside. Alpha, look at them. They dared to lock me up. I was looking for you, but they dragged me here. The woman spoke the moment she entered the pack house. Nice try, Georgiana. I was also looking for you. Lucas said with a maniacal smile. Everyone was holding their breath. They were amazed by the way Lucas handled every situation. No matter what danger was in front of him, he looked calm or indifferent, as if nothing was affecting him and he was enjoying dealing with it. Leave her! Lucas ordered the guards, and they released Georgiana. He walked to the couch and sat down in a relaxed manner. He lit up a cigarette and looked at her. Georgiana looked around the living room and could guess what had happened. She could see anger in everyone's eyes for her. Her eyes shifted toward Logan, who was glaring at her. She immediately looked away and walked to Lucas. On the other hand, Lucas gazed at Logan and asked, Why did you send your man after her, big brother? There was amusement in his tone. Logan turned his head to Lucas and responded, "This woman was going to kill me during the war when I was lying on the bed. In fact, she almost killed my wolf when she first came to check on me. I could hear her at that time. I heard each and everything. I was lucky that you saved me that night with your blood. Otherwise, this woman had already planned my grave." "Lucas saved you?" Neil and Ella asked at the same time. Elora and Elisa were stunned as they looked at Lucas, who was peacefully smoking. Meanwhile, Georgiana could not help but gasp. "You saved him?" "I was right. You saved your brother. But why?" she asked Lucas with wide eyes. "Of course, I saved him. If a brother can't help another, then what is the meaning of the relationship of blood?" "But you said that you saved him." Georgiana nodded her head. Her mind was puzzled by Lucas. Lucas blew out the smoke and replied, "Georgiana James, you have forgotten who I am. By just looking at your eyes, I can say that you are lying. Didn't I warn you that day not to play any trick with me in any way? But tonight, I found out about your biggest conspiracy of all time. Didn't you do the same with your daughter, too, by pushing her to death? My bad. Looks like my own witch has turned out to be a disloyal." Georgiana was taken back after hearing Lucas. She could not believe her ears. It was hard for her to accept that Lucas was aware of everything. "You knew about it?" Elora asked, sobbing. Seeing her crying, Logan leaned toward her and wrapped his hand around her shoulder, then rubbed her forearm to comfort her. "Of course, I knew. I was aware of her every action when she was in my pack. Otherwise, why did you think I brought another older witch to the coven?" Georgiana fell to her knees and cried out loud. "Forgive this naive witch, Alpha. Accept my apology, or kill me. I didn't mean to do that. My daughter was in love with you. That was why I gave her away to come close to you." We can take that excuse." Lucas nodded his head as if he agreed with her. But he raised a brow and asked, "What about the Wizard of Alpha Axel?" Georgiana's eyes almost popped out. "How did you know about it?" Lucas glanced at his officials, and they started to chuckle. Others were looking at them with wonder. That wizard was a fan. When Lucas returned to the coven from this pack, the man told him everything he knew about you, including how you went to his pack and manipulated him into entering the coven in order to break every spell. Beta Max spoke out. Georgiana's face turned pale. Lucas shook his head and said, "You wanted me to stay away from this pack, or I can say stay away from my mate and stay beside your only daughter." At that instant, Glenn got to his feet and bolted over to Georgiana. In a fit of rage, he seized her by the hair and demanded to know, "You knew about the mate thing? Why did you lie to me? Why did you deceive me like that? Why did you force me to play with my daughter's life?" Glenn was yelling in fury. His eyes were watery and blurry. He could not believe that their old friend, whom he thought was a well-wisher of them, turned out to be an evil witch. How could he forget about the days when he heard her daughter crying alone in her room? There were many times when he had the urge to go talk to her and tell her the truth about the situation. He desired to reassure her that he was not ruining her life but was, in fact, protecting her from danger. Every time, he stopped himself and Joey because he knew that their daughter was stubborn. If he had told her about it, she would not have listened to any prophecy and would have chosen the path of love. But now he was regretting it. He felt that he was actually a life destroyer for his daughter. He was living with seeing hate in her daughter's eyes because he felt that her daughter was at least safe. But now, how could he live with this guilt? Glenn fell to the ground with a push when Georgiana grabbed his wrist. She pushed him with power. It burned his wrist slightly. Joey and Elisa were the first to reach him. Elisa scowled at Georgiana. How could you do that to me? What have I done to deserve this from you? As soon as Georgiana realized that everyone had been aware of every detail of the truth, she lost all desire to keep anything a secret. She started to laugh. Her dark laugh echoed throughout the pack house. I thought we were good friends, Georgiana. Why did you play with my children's lives? Neil said this to her with a disappointed look. He came to his best friend to support him and told Linus to help him. Meanwhile, Ella was crying. She stared at Georgiana. I despised you. You are also a mother. But you didn't even bother to hurt your own daughter. Why? What was the need for you to do that? Georgiana's eyes glowed green. Her face turned grimace. She twisted her head and pointed her finger at Elora. I wanted my daughter to become the Luna of a true blood alpha. She fell for him too. But she never paid attention to what I had to say. I desired to have control and power. I wanted her to be powerful. So I pushed her to death so that your son could come and save her. I wanted him to mark her that night. But he was clever enough to understand my plan and did not mark her. Saying that, she turned to Lucas, who was staring at her with his sharp eyes. He asked her, you wanted power? What if I show you some new power? Are you excited? Georgiana was astonished, but she gathered up her courage. She was the most powerful witch. How could she lose? She nodded her head proudly. Come. Lucas let out. At that precise moment, Tisa and another elderly woman entered the pack house as though they were waiting for him to grant permission to do so. Elisa realized that Tisa was absent all the time. However, when she shifted her eyes to the old woman, her lips parted, and she said, Grandma, you. It was the old witch she used to meet at the bus stop. Last time, she was the one who told her about the true blood at the art gallery. Subtly, something hit her mind. She felt tears roll down her eyes when she recalled her statement. Upon their first meeting, she told her she had a mate. The next time, she told her that her mate was the almighty Alpha. She mistook it and thought that she was talking about Logan. In fact, she was the one who told her to stay close to her mate to get her wolf back. She was talking about Lucas the whole time. But I could not understand her. She thought and bit her bottom lip to control herself. Elisa, her name is Aurelia. Tisa told her. Aurelia smiled at Elisa. Elisa observed that Aurelia appeared to have a younger appearance compared to how she appeared in the art gallery. It was not a cosmetic because it could not change her complexion or make her glow, rather, it was something else. It was the power that, day by day, gave her a more youthful appearance. Georgiana stood up and asked in anger, what is she doing here, Alpha? Didn't you say you kicked her off the coven? I lied, Georgiana. Lucas replied and grinned at her. How could you? Georgiana asked with disbelief. Lucas threw the cigarette and got to his feet. Everyone moved a little when he stood up. Remember, Georgiana? You asked me a question approximately 2 weeks ago. You asked me why I was staring at the entrance like I was waiting for someone. Georgiana took a step back as she recalled that. What did I say? What was I waiting for, Georgiana? She tightened her fists and replied while stuttering, waiting for the demise of your enemies. Absolutely correct. You have a good memory, but how could you possibly have forgotten that I can also grab hold of your tail? You gained your strength from the blood that I provided to you, didn't you? But throughout it all, you had every intention of giving me the slip. Everyone could not be more shocked. Both Neil and Ella experienced an internalized sense of fury. They were under the impression that Georgiana relied heavily on Lucas as a means of expanding her power. They wondered if she brainwashed their son against them, too. Alpha, don't say that. I never wanted your bad. I simply wished for you to bestow your strength on my daughter. Your Luna will surpass all other wolves in strength and power. Your rank is rare, as is your mate, whom you will mark. Please, don't misunderstand me. Georgiana begged while shaking her hand. Mom, why did you do that? That night, when Lucas came to save me, he told me that he didn't like me. That time, I wanted to step back. But you forced me to become your puppet. Don't try to put your gun on my shoulder to hide your fault, Mom. I had no idea that you had been deceiving people for such a long period of time with so many lies. Georgiana rushed to her daughter. But Logan came between them. Georgiana glared at Logan and confessed, I knew that you would reject Elisa because it was your fate. That was why I always tried to make sure that you would never leave Elisa. Logan clenched his jaw and wanted to attack her, but Betamax stopped him. There was a growl heard in the pack house. Everyone turned to Elisa. She was the one who growled in anger. She scowled at Georgiana as her eyes turned ocean blue. You destroyed my life. You not only made me despise my father, but you also caused me to lose the person who was the love of my life. Because of you, he hates me now. Why did you do that? Georgiana put her finger on her own forehead and then pointed at Elisa. Your forehead can tell me everything about your fate. You were a pure-blood Omega. When I saw you in your younger years, that's when I realized it. I shared that information with your father, but I didn't share with him the fact that you will one day be the mate of a true-blood alpha. I was the one who left those hungry wolves after you a few years ago. But your luck favored you, and Logan saved you that night. But it only helped me make your father believe in my lies. When Alpha Easton attacked Logan's car, it was me who helped him track you both. His target was only Logan. But I wanted you both to die together so that Alpha Lucas and my daughter could be mates. I had already known at that time that Logan was my daughter's mate. That was why I planned all the things very carefully. I wanted Logan to die when Elora rejected him. But Alpha Lucas saved him. I wanted you to die tonight as well. But surprisingly, you all are alive just because Alpha showed his mercy on you. All I wanted was to gain my daughter's power that she would get from her mate. Then, I would have become more powerful than anyone else. If I had my way, I would have dominated the world of witches without the assistance of any werewolves. Elisa was fuming after hearing her. She was so angry that she could not help but walk up to her and give her a vigorous slap. Georgiana could not take it. She glared at Elisa while she touched the spot on her face where she had been slapped. You have the audacity to do what? You are the cause of everything that is taking place. I will kill you today. She grabbed Elisa's neck and held her arm with another hand. Others rushed to them in an effort to rescue Elisa from her. Georgiana, however, had a great deal of power, and she used it to her advantage by erecting a shield around them. So they could not break the shield. Logan realized that it was the same invisible shield that he felt that prevented him when he tried to talk to Elora before rejection. Georgiana's grip on Elisa's neck caused her to lose her balance and fall to the ground. Elisa's entire body started to tremble at the same time. Everyone backed away as soon as they heard Lucas let out a booming growl. Both Glenn and Joey turned to look at Lucas and pleaded with him, "Please, save our daughter, Alpha." As Lucas glared at the invisible shield, his eyes grew a brighter shade of orange. It was invisible to other werewolves, but not to him. When he stepped inside it, it burst like a gigantic water bubble that had been brought crashing down by a touch. Georgiana went insane. She was about to put all of her force to kill Elisa but stopped when someone grabbed her. Lucas grabbed the back of Georgiana's neck and pulled her away from Elisa. "How dare you touch my woman?" He growled and shoved her on the floor. It was like the power of a hammer falling on the ground, the tiles cracked. Alpha, he did not allow her to speak and instead seized her by the throat. He darkened his eyes as if he were doing something with his eyes, and because of the impact, Georgiana started to scream loudly. In a few seconds, her tears turned into blood. She was shedding blood from her eyes. Lucas turned his head toward Elora. Elora fell on her knees and cried. "Will you regret it if I kill her? Alpha. I gave you another chance to stay alive, Elora. Will you?" "No, Alpha." She let out a loud sob. She could not believe that her mother wanted the power that she would gain from her mate. That meant she wanted to kill her daughter after getting her abilities. How could a woman be so cruel? Lucas cast his gaze over Aurelia. She gave her a slight nod and lifted her hands. As soon as Georgiana realized what was going to happen, her eyes widened, and she started shaking her head in disbelief. She attempted to get away by seizing Lucas's wrist and using her spells to burn his hand. She did so in the hope that it would free her. Indeed, Lucas's palm burned, but it healed in a few seconds. Fire began to blaze within the palms of Aurelia's hands as she encircled them. She started to chant spells while closing her eyes. Everyone felt that a wind rushed inside the pack house. They were forced to take a step backward by the pressure. However, neither Lucas nor Georgiana moved since Lucas refused to let her move either. Aurelia opened her eyes. They were glowing red. Georgiana's eyes widened when she saw that. Lucas smirked at her. "I gave her my power to punish you, my witch. Because you have an excessive amount of power, I require someone who is capable of competing with you. Didn't your alpha plan well?" Georgiana made an effort to apologize while shaking her head. When it comes time for them to die, every creature desperately tries to cling to life, but they are unable to do so because it is already their turn to depart. Aurelia pressed her palms together as if her palms consumed the fire. Lucas released Georgiana's neck and stared at her. Georgiana cried out loud. She felt like her heart was burning inside her body when she was still alive. After a while, her scream stopped, and the whole pack house turned completely silent. Lucas stood up and mocked her while looking at her dead body. "I've already begun to miss you. You've touched so many lives. Goodbye, Georgiana." The whole pack house was silent. As if something heavy had moved from everyone's chest, they felt relieved. "Elisa!" Tisa screamed when she saw her losing consciousness. Everyone was worried for her. She will wake up soon. She just could not take so much. Aurelia spoke out. Lucas stared at Elisa without moving his leg. Logan glanced at him. When he saw he was not going toward Elisa, he went to her and lifted her up. He looked at Glenn and then at Lucas. "I am taking her to a room. Let's go," Glenn said to Linus and headed to a room located downstairs. Lucas did not say anything, nor did he stop Logan. Others followed Logan to the room, where he took Elisa. Lucas turned around and looked at Georgiana's dead body. He looked at his officials. They nodded at him, implying that they would take care of it. Alpha Aurelia called Lucas. Lucas gazed at her and said, "Well done. When I return to the Black Moon Pack, I will declare you the leading witch." Aurelia bowed to him and asked, "Permit me to check on Elisa. That child had to take so many things." Lucas gave her a nod. At that time, Logan returned to the living room. He wanted to talk with Lucas, but before that, Lucas spoke out. Elora did not reply to him. Her eyes were on her mother's body. She was crying while looking at her. Her body was shaking as she was sobbing like a child who had just lost her mother. Elora. Lucas called her once again. She flinched and raised her head to look at him. Yes. Follow me. Lucas ordered her and headed to the way of the garden area. Elora slowly stood up. She was about to fall when Logan rushed to her and grabbed her waist to stop her from falling. Thank you, she said and moved away. She then followed Lucas with slow steps. She turned to look at her mother for the last time and then spun to the way. She left the living room. Logan was staring at her all the time. Lucas was walking in the garden. When he heard Elora's footsteps, he turned around. The moment he turned, Elora ran to him and hugged him. She began to cry. She cried her heart out in his chest. Lucas stroked her hair and said, "Don't cry. She doesn't deserve your tears. She said she wanted to take my powers when you would mark me. That means she wanted to kill me." She sobbed and burst into tears. "I am telling you, Elora. The faster you can move on, the faster you can get your life back. She did not love you. She only loved power. Otherwise, she never tried to hurt you in the first place." Elora broke the hug and looked at him. "You knew that it was her plan, but you still saved me. Why?" He smiled at her warmly. It was the first time she saw him smiling at her. She used to love this man a lot. But that time, he never gave her a small smile. Lucas caressed her hair and replied, "You are a pure soul. You are not like your mother. I could not let any innocent person die because of her mother's stupidity." She bit her lip and hugged him once again. "Thanks, Lucas. You are the master of my fate, indeed." She heard Lucas, "Someone is so eager to talk to you that he is hiding behind a tree and eavesdropping on our conversation." "Hey!" Elora moved away from him and turned around. She noticed Logan standing behind a tree. He came out and scratched his neck. "I am sorry. I was just worried, so that doesn't suit you, big brother. If you wanted to talk to her, you could have told me. I am not like you, who is after another man's woman," Lucas said and winked at him. Logan was stunned to hear him. The way he was soothing Elora, he thought he would not let Elora go and really made her his Luna. His eyes widened as he realized how Lucas was 2 years ago. "Lil brother, how can I forget how good you are with girls?" Logan said and shook his head. "You are wrong. Not for once I touched her, not even let anyone do that. I knew she was your mate. I was reserving her for you." Logan walked to Lucas, and without saying anything, he hugged him. Lucas was taken aback by his sudden action. Elora was watching the two brothers talk about her. But when Logan hugged Lucas, she stared at them. She could see how awkward Lucas was looking right now. She grabbed Lucas's hand and put it on Logan's back. "You allowed me to hug you twice. Now it's time for your brother. Accept his apology and let everything go." Saying that, Elora walked out of the garden, leaving the two brothers alone. Lucas looked away when Elora had left the site. He patted Logan's back. "I am really sorry. I should have taken care of how you were feeling. Now I am feeling like I was a selfish kid." He broke the hug and looked at Lucas. He cupped his face and said, "Forgive your brother. I did wrong to you. From childhood, I was afraid of losing mom and dad. I thought you were already their son. So if I left their side for a moment, they would corner me like other people do to their adopted child. I didn't want to be like them. I wanted to be the best son for them, someone who always took care of them. But I should have always thought about you too. In my own world, I forgot that you also have a heart. You can also feel needy for your parents. But I swear, I always wanted us to be together. I never wanted you to go away from us like that. You never told me why you disliked me. So I started to dislike you too. There were so many fights between us, but I never thought to hurt you. Until Elisa came into our lives. I regretted after rejecting her. I wanted to make everything right. For once I forced her to be with me after the breakup. That was my fault. I should have seen how much you loved her. But then I wanted to protect her. If Georgiana didn't lie to me, I really let her go for you. However, I wanted to save her life. But lastly, my wolf turned wild for his second chance mate. He was afraid to lose his mate, so he almost hurt Elisa. I realized at that time that I could not be with her anymore. I asked for forgiveness from her because I could not marry her. I was scared that she would die. I want to thank you, Lucas. You made me feel what rejection actually feels like. I thought that apologizing to someone could mend their heart, but I was so wrong. Thank you for saving my life and proving that you really think of me as your own brother. Lucas averted his gaze and sighed. He removed Logan's hands from his cheeks and cleared his throat. Stop being emotional. I have to go. I have so many things to do. Lucas walked past him and headed to the entrance. Logan turned around to him and said, Lucas, Elisa loves you a lot. In the past 2 years, I could not win her heart because it was only you who was always in her heart. It was all a misunderstanding, and she was just in a trap. It was never her fault. Elisa opened her eyes. She experienced discomfort in her neck as well as her arm. She turned her head and noticed that there were other people in the room. Her parents, Alpha Neil, Ella, Linus, Tisa, and the elder witch Aurelia, were all looking at her. Elisa, are you okay? Joey asked her daughter as she was sitting beside her on the bed. Yes, Mom. She attempted to speak, but her voice came out raspy. It was difficult for her to continue talking as she cleared her throat. Don't talk too much. You need to take some rest. Linus instructed her. She wanted to sit up, but Tisa came to her and held her hand. Didn't you hear Linus? You need to take a rest. But everyone is okay now, my child. Alpha Neil assured her. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She was able to recall what had taken place before she fell unconscious. She did not believe that she had to spend her years in lies. It was that evil witch's plan to make Lucas and her apart from each other. She opened her eyes when she remembered how Aurelia and Lucas killed Georgiana. She turned to Aurelia and said, Grandma, call me, Aurelia. You are safe, dear. Every danger has left your head. Your forehead is clear now. There is no mark of pain, but only happiness. Elisa felt tears rolling out of her eyes. She smiled at her lightly. Thanks, Aurelia. You helped us. She shook her head. All thanks to our almighty Alpha. He gave me power. He helped me grow my rank to a higher level than I had ever imagined. I am thankful to him for giving me a new life. Rin's parents felt proud of their son when they heard Aurelia. Elisa looked around the room as if she were searching for someone. Glenn came over to her before sitting down next to her. Dad, this time, she sat up. No one stopped her. Her mother helped her as she placed a pillow behind her back so that she could lean against it and sit comfortably. Glenn placed his hand on her head. Elisa noticed that a bandage was wrapped around his arm. "Dad, your hand. It's just a small wound. It will be fine. Don't worry, my princess." To stop her tears from falling, she bit her bottom lip. As the realization dawned on her that she had been completely mistaken about him this whole time, she lowered her head. But he was actually thinking only about her safety. "I am sorry, Dad. I talked so rudely with you and Mom. I was so impolite that I stopped having meals with you both," she said and sobbed. Joey shook her head as she also cried for her daughter. Glenn held Elisa's hand and saw her wounded wrist. "I should say sorry to you, Elisa. Because of me, you have to bear so many things. I was scared. I thought I would lose you. Forgive your dad." Elisa hugged her father and rested her head on his shoulder. "No, Dad. You did nothing wrong. You did those things just to save your daughter. If I were in your place, I would have done the same." Joey joined the hug. Others turned emotional as a result of witnessing them. Glenn exited the room once he had finished his conversation with Elisa. He was making his way to the living room when he suddenly stopped in front of a hall where the bar was situated. He could see Lucas and his officials having drinks there. When he entered the hall, everyone's attention was immediately drawn to him. "Can I have a talk with you, Alpha?" he asked Lucas politely. Others stood up to leave, but Lucas lifted his hand to stop them. "You all can stay here. The hall is big enough," Lucas said to them without looking at them. They acknowledged his statement with a nod and then moved to another side so that Glenn could have a private conversation with him. Lucas was sitting on a stool while grabbing a glass that was on a counter. Glenn walked to Lucas and stood next to him. "Meet my personal bartender, Vernon." Lucas spoke out to Glenn. Glenn looked at the man who was actually the Theta of the Black Moon Pack. "But he is." "You think right. He is my Theta. But he is also my bartender, who knows what drinks I like. Isn't it, Vernon?" Lucas said to Glenn and, lastly, asked Vernon. Vernon smiled at Lucas and nodded his head. He turned to Glenn and responded, "When we were students, I used to work in bars to earn money." He thought I was really good at it. Glenn was amazed to hear that. He gave him a nod and switched his attention to Lucas. "Alpha, I wanted to talk to you." Lucas turned to him and asked, "About what?" Glenn could not remain in eye contact with him. He lowered his head and started to speak, "I would like to apologize to you. I am aware that I am not deserving of your pardon. I was always rude to you. But I only wanted you to stay away from my daughter since I was alerted from the beginning. I had no idea that you were going to end up being her mate. If I had a single knowledge about it, I would have never come between you two. Is that so? But I believe that you have too much pride to hand over your daughter to me. Didn't you always feel that I was worthless? Just because you learned about my real identity, so you..." Glenn interrupted him by looking at him and shaking his head. "No, never. If that were in my mind, I would have offered her hand to you when you returned this pack as the head alpha of the Black Moon Pack. Believe me when I say that I never intended to cause harm to anyone and that my sole intention was to try to save the life of my daughter." Lucas took another sip of his drink before setting his glass down on the counter and turning his attention to Vernon. Vernon dropped another ice cube on it. "Glenn Clark, you don't know how many times I thought to return this pack and kill you mercilessly for parting your daughter from me," Lucas said and turned his head to Glenn. Glenn gulped but stared at him. Glenn was presented with a fresh glass of wine that had been prepared by Vernon. "No need," Glenn said. "Drink?" Lucas remarked as he motioned with his head toward the stool that was available for him to sit on. Glenn sat next to Lucas and grabbed the glass. He looked at Lucas. Lucas continued to speak, "Your daughter caught my eye the moment I returned this pack. When Logan rejected your daughter, I found that she was my fated mate. But I did not force the mate bond on her. Since I had come here while concealing my scent, she could not feel the bond or recognize her mate. But I did. I saved her that night in the forest. I forced her to move on in her life. I gave her new hope to come out of her sorrow. I did everything that could make her fall in love with me. I wanted her to love me with her heart, not be forced by fate or greed. But what did you do? You showed me her weakest side, which I really hate. You made me believe that she did not deserve a wolf like me who did not fear anything. You separated two mates." Glenn's hand came dangerously close to dropping the glass, it made a clicking sound. But because of the counter, it did not fall to the ground. Glenn's face turned pale. "I destroyed her life. Punish me. That's not needed anymore. As I told you, I thought of killing you, but when I heard what Georgiana did, I understood that it was not your fault." Glenn parted his lips as they quivered. "It's not Elisa's fault either. Please don't hurt her, hurt me instead." "Tisk. You and your daughter share a lot of similarities, which is really great to see. When I informed your daughter about my previous plan, your daughter told me the same," Lucas said to him. He then turned to Owen, who was talking with Max and Colin. They were not far from them anymore. When they heard the sound of glass being clinked, they moved closer. They heard everything. "Owen, what award should we give to Mr. Clark and his daughter?" Owen thought for a moment and replied, "The kindest person in the world." "Shut up, Owen. Don't help him in teasing his father-in-law." Gamma Colin interrupted Owen. "Father-in-law?" Glenn asked as he was stunned to hear that. "So you still have a problem with your daughter being with me?" Lucas questioned him. Glenn stood up and shook his head. "No, Alpha. It's the best news." Lucas chugged down the drink, then said to him, "It's her fate. She was destined to be my Luna from the beginning." When everyone exited the bedroom to give Elisa some space to get some rest, Elisa greeted each person by saying good night. Her mother told her that she would come to check on her when she would wake up after taking a nap. Elisa stared at the empty room. Though everyone came to check on her, Lucas did not come to see her. She gave the window a quick check and noticed that it was already afternoon. The whole night went on in the war, then the thing happened with Georgiana, and after that she went unconscious. So when she woke up, it was already noon. After talking with everyone and passing some time, it was now afternoon. She looked at her bandaged wrist. She ignored it and left her room. When she reached the living room, she saw no one there, not even the maids. She realized that everyone was taking some rest after having such a terrifying night. She slowly stepped on the stairs and headed upstairs. Her steps were unhurried as so many thoughts came to her mind. She walked to the side where Lucas's room was. She gathered up courage and stood in front of his room's door. She wanted to knock on the door. But she knew if she let out her voice, he might not give her permission to enter his room. She believed he was still angry with her. That was why he did come to check on her. She twisted the doorknob while praying in her mind that it was unlocked. She felt relieved when she found the door unlocked. She opened it and saw Lucas standing before the window. A ray of sunlight was falling on his face. It sparkled on his side profile, highlighting how handsome he is. "Lucas," she called out his name with a weak tone. Her throat was already sore. So she tried her best not to let out any raspy tone. After noticing that he was not responding to her, she shut the door behind her and went over to speak with him. "Can we talk?" she asked while moving toward him. His back was facing her. "What are you doing here?" he asked without turning back. She stopped right behind him. She stared at his tall figure. He was standing there with his hands tucked into the pockets of his pants like a gentleman. "I wanted to talk, so I came here directly." He turned to the left and then headed into his closet. "You should have not come here." She frowned while looking at him. "Why? You know the reason." "Lucas, please. Listen to me." He was about to open the closet door but paused and turned his head toward her. His eyes met hers. She inhaled deeply but maintained eye contact with him. "Didn't you say you hated me? Where is your hatred? Vanish in the air." His voice was cold. It made her choke on her own breath. She took a deep breath and replied, "It was because you made Elora reject Logan, and he was almost dying. It was because you warned me about killing my dad. I was scared that you would really do that." Her eyes started to well up with tears. He did not look away from her. His eyes were focused as he shifted them on her neck and then her bandaged wrist. "I am sorry, Lucas. Can you forgive me?" she asked him with hope. "There is nothing to forgive," he replied calmly. She made her way over to him and held his hand. "I am begging you, forgive me. I can forgive your father, but how can I forgive the woman who I put my trust in? Can you give me back my 2 years? No, there is no way. Can you give me back my trust? No, you can't." Saying that, he removed her hand from his hand. He opened the closet and took out a bathrobe and clothes. It was indicating that he was going to take a shower now. "Lucas, I was not living happily either. My 2 years also went lost. I also felt betrayed by my parents, but as you saw, it was all that witch's conspiracy. She was just trying to manipulate my dad and others." Lucas gave her the side eye and shook his head in response. "Elisa, you can't understand me. You will never understand. You still don't get the reason. You should have come with me that night. You are the one who broke my heart. Others were just pawns of fate. None of this would have happened today if you had chosen me over them." Elisa stepped back when she heard him. "So you still hate me? Will you continue to hate me in the same way?" she asked, and tears fell on her cheeks. He did not appear to be upset, angry, or agitated in any way. He replied, "You are my mate. How can I hate you? It is beyond my ability. But you can never win my heart again. You broke it, and it's just over. We are mates, and we will always be. However, the relationship between us will never be the same again." It broke Elisa's heart. She felt as though someone had pierced her heart. She turned around and rushed to the door. She opened it and found Alpha Neil standing there. "Uncle." Neil looked at her and then glanced at Lucas. He grabbed Elisa's hand and walked to his son. Elisa immediately wiped her tears with her other hand and stood there silently. Neil reached out and took his son's hand, then placed Elisa's hand on top of it. "Lucas, you forgave me and your family. In fact, you forgave Glenn. Just now, he was talking to me. But I don't see why you are being so harsh with this little child. Isn't it obvious that she has done nothing wrong?" Lucas removed his hand from Elisa's hand and looked at his father. Dad Neil's eyes widened. Without any irony or mockery in his voice, his son addressed him as Dad for the very first time. "It's our private matter. I hope you all will stay away from it." "But, my son, there should be no but in any answer. I need you to tell everyone that they should finish packing their bags within the next few hours." Neil was stunned. Elisa was also surprised to hear him. "Why?" Neil asked Lucas. Lucas stared at him calmly and replied, "Don't you want to see what empire your son developed with Pax? We are all leaving tonight for the Black Moon Pack. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.